An entitled man sells me his car that is absolutely working fine for $500, claiming that it was beyond repair and that there's no way I could ever fix it. But now he's demanding $10,000 after he watches me fix it right there on the spot and drive it off of his lot. And I honestly could not be more satisfied with proving this guy wrong. Here's what happened. So back in 2008, I was 21 years old. Craigslist, of all places, was still the website for everything. From cars to hookups, there was pretty much nothing you couldn't find. The RX-8 hit the market in 2003, and I fell in love with the way they looked immediately. However, they were stickered around $35,000 for the base model, and I was a 16-year-old kid from a lower-class family at the time. I spent years in high school delivering pizza and helping out with my uncle on the weekends at the shop that he worked at. I did anything I could to get a few more dollars for my super cool race car. At the time, I had bought a second-gen Eclipse GSX and truly had no idea just how cool this car was. Every night, I would lay in bed before sleep and look at cars listed on Craigslist for sale. My girlfriend of the time often complained, which is pretty normal for a gearhead like myself at that age. Fast forward to 2008, and I was an ASE certified mechanic and had been driving a tow truck for a little over 3 years. One night, while lying in bed with my then girlfriend, I came across an ad for a 2004 RX-8 Shinka, black on a set of chrome aftermarket but knockoff wheels. It looked great. However, the ad explained that it had a blown motor and would need to be replaced and was not covered by warranty. Having been in love with these cars and the older models of the RX-7 and Cosmo, I knew a lot about them. You see, Mazda's RX line have special engines in them. They are rotary motors instead of pistons, like a 4-cylinder or a V8. I also happen to be a certified rotary tech. I contacted the seller and I asked why he thought the motor was blown out, and he responded with something like,
I'm a mechanic and I own a shop. We've had the car for a few months and we cannot get it running. These dang rotaries are weird and they're known to blow out. It's blown out and I know it is.
I then asked him if I could come meet him in the morning and look the car over, and he agreed to do that. So fast forward and I'm at his shop, and I actually had a proposition for him. I said, hey man, if I'm able to fix it for you, would you be willing to make some kind of deal with me? I'm pretty sure I could do it. And before I could go any further, this guy cut me off and he said,
no, it has a blown motor. Either give me $500 or I'm not selling it.
I tried to continue and I tried to explain that I might be able to fix it, but he said,
I don't care what you can do. I only care if you could give me $500.
Realizing I'm going nowhere, I decide to ask him if it'll even start in the first place. He goes on to say,
it will start and run for about a minute, but then it shuts off again. Or if you try to move it, it just doesn't work and it won't start for hours afterwards.
So at that point, I said, okay, I'm gonna look it over. Here's $500. I looked the car over, did a compression test on the motor, which came back good. I then proceeded to do the Mazda's built-in system to cycle the motor, which pushes all excess fluids out of the motor when flooded. This took little more than pumping the brakes just about 25 times, while an accessory after turning the key on and off. I let the car run for about 45 seconds and shut it off, already having the key and the title. I explained that I'd be back that night to pick it up and asked what time he closed, as his lot was gated. This entitled mechanic told me that he'd be around until about 6:30, and I agreed to be there by 6 o'clock. After that, we parted ways for the day. While I was at work, I called up my brother-in-law, who's also a mechanic, and explained everything, and I asked him to give me a ride down to the shop, as it would honestly be much cheaper to pay for his gas than to pay for the diesel to run a tow truck down there after work. We hopped into his Mustang at around 4:50 and headed out. We parked right in front of this guy's shop, and I walked in to tell him that I was here to take the car, and I thanked him for the sale. This guy then said,
when is your tow truck gonna be here? I don't have all night, kid. You're gonna have to push it out on the street if they take too long.
I looked at him and I said, oh, no need for a tow truck. I brought a transport tag from my work. I tried to tell you that I'm a mechanic who also specializes in these cars specifically. There's honestly nothing wrong with it. My brother is bolting a transport tag on it right now, but this guy did not believe me. He just kept saying,
that motor is broken. No, you're lying. Get it off my lot now.
So I just looked at him and said, have a nice day, and thanks again for the car. I walked out and I hopped into the RX-8. I started it and I followed my brother-in-law out of the lot. Looking in my rearview mirror, I could see this entitled man standing in his parking lot, literally stomping on his hat. He had spiked it like a football onto the pavement. And when I got home, I checked my email, and I had one from this man demanding another $10K for the car, as he didn't know that it ran. I then said the following to to him in an email. Sir, I attempted to tell you twice that I was a certified rotary tech and even offered to look the car over before buying it. You refused to even hear me out, let alone acknowledge what I was saying. I understand that you are angry, but I don't care what you are. I gave you $500 as agreed. Have a nice night. This man emailed me another 30 plus times after this, and I never responded. And honestly, considering the way he was acting when I first met him, I hope his attitude has changed and he learns to fix a car before he gives it away for $500. How entitled can you possibly be? I mean, if this guy was just a little bit more patient and actually listened to this guy, he probably wouldn't have let thousands of dollars right off his lot. It's also incredibly comical that this guy messaged him 30 times and also demanded about $10,000 more for a car that he already sold off. I mean, in my opinion, it's not the original poster's fault that this guy did not know what he was doing. Like, literally, this is on this cocky mechanic that didn't want to hear what this guy was saying. If he was just a little more patient and shut his mouth, he probably could have worked out some kind of deal, and they both could have gotten away with a lot more money. So good for the original poster for knowing what they're talking about and taking the deal that this guy was demanding, because sometimes entitled people like this need to learn the hard way, and it sounds like this guy definitely got the message. My coworker harasses me at work for being trans, and I have had just about enough of this and I don't know what to do. For a bit of background, I've been working at McDonald's for 6 months now as a drive-through cashier. I am 19 years old, I'm trans masculine, and I'm very neurodivergent. Until this last Friday, literally nobody cared since it was never relevant, and at the end of the day, I'd been doing my job well. So why should my private life matter, right? Well, allow me to introduce Kyle. This is not their real name. Kyle, as of the time of posting this story, has only been working at my workplace for 1 week. Last week, when he started, I happened to be sick. Due to this fact, the first place he was trained was at my regular position, so he could be back up when I was gone. This week, when I returned, I naturally was put in my normal spot. Now, something to keep in mind is that the spot that I work at in the building is the least physically intensive thing you could do at this restaurant. In contrast, it is the most mentally demanding spot in the building, as it's one where you really have to be at the top of your game. You have to take orders for drive-through customers on one of the lanes, as well as accept payments for all customers that come through, making sure not to incorrectly have them pay for someone else's food, and to make sure customers' orders are correct in general. Oftentimes, you would be doing two things at once. Otherwise, the customer's wait time would skyrocket. Over the past 3 days, here's what he has done in chronological order that I have personally witnessed. To start things off, he hit on a girl coworker while standing uncomfortably close to her, only for her to look back at me in a visibly uncomfortable manner as we both laugh in the kind of way where we both know that we're silently saying, please get this guy away from us. And this interaction was literally the first time I'd ever met him. He also told our manager to his face that he has an attitude problem after being told to get off his phone and put his headset back on to help the customer he kept waiting for 5 minutes because apparently his friend came through the drive-thru and wanted to call them while he was working, and he was dumb enough to answer his phone. He also had some serious issues with trying to figure out the menu. For example, he asked me if a certain item was still on the menu in the first place, so I asked him if he was even able to select the item in the first place. He responded by saying, well, no, and so I say to him, okay, well that means that we don't have any. But of course, he decides to go against everything I have to say because he says, I don't think so, just ask the general manager. And I was really confused by this because what does a manager have to do with any of this? I say to him again, if you can't select the item and the icon says that it's unavailable, it means we don't have any. You can't sell an item we don't have to the customer. You don't need to ask the manager for that either. After half a second of silence, the only thing Kyle responds back with is by saying to me that apparently I'm annoying, and then he proceeded to ignore me for the rest of the day. He also asked me to get a box of barbecue sauce packets, and I obliged, regretfully so. After I brought a newly opened box of sauce, he demanded, not asked mind you, that I fill the sauce containers for him, and when he barked that order at me, I told him no. I had to take orders from the cars that were waiting in line. He then demanded a second time to fill the sauces, this time much more forcibly. I just snickered at him and said no again, and went to take the orders back at my spot. While I was walking away, he called me slow. Then he later called me lazy, which is whatever. Some days later, it is time for me to go on break. As he was my backup, he was to take over while I go eat something. As I'm inputting my start break time into the system, he turns to me and says, so what makes you think you're a man? I stopped in my tracks and I stared at him. After I took a moment to process what he said, I see him looking condescending condescendingly at me, expecting a response. I say to him, I just am. I look flatly at him, already done with his garbage. He then says, what about your hair then? For some context, I've been growing my hair out since the 6th grade. I literally have the longest hair of anyone I know, and I'm absolutely not gonna cut it off just to please some jerk's need for gender norms to be upheld in his worldview. I reply by saying, you know I'm not the only guy here with long hair, right? And this is the truth. We share a cis male coworker who also has hair longer than some of the girls. The only difference between us is that I have terrible beard genetics, so I don't have one while he does. And this pretty much ended the conversation that we had, as I just left after saying that I have to go eat my food. By the time I got back, his shift had ended, so I told my manager what he said to me. My manager, who was also pretty much fed up with Kyle, told me that I should have told him right away so Kyle could be reprimanded harshly and swiftly. This last incident involved him seeing me walking out of the bathroom. He took that as an opportunity to openly complain to anyone who was within earshot that he was uncomfortable, that he had to share a restroom with a mentally ill girl, and that she shouldn't be allowed to work here because she has problems and isn't fit to work. Yes, he made absolutely sure to emphasize that I'm a she at any chance that he got. When not one but 2 managers on the shift told him he was behaving violently and out of line, he had the audacity to say again, well, they have an attitude problem. He hates me and treats me awfully, so it's not my fault I'm upset. As if him being told to do his job is somehow on the same level as him being rampantly bigoted towards me. Because of this, he was told to apologize to me or go home, but he refused to apologize, so he was told to leave. Even further, rather than being concerned about apologizing to me, he was more interested if he could still get a free meal out of the restaurant, which by the way was a resounding no. Now, as far as I know, I've taken on the worst of his behavior consecutively, but by no means is my side all of it. Other coworkers have also experienced some semblance of discrimination, as well as general discomfort, harassment, and this weird holier-than-thou attitude that he has towards pretty much everybody. The only reason I'm his main target is because I seemingly took his favorite spot at work, where he could easily be on his phone. And honestly, I just can't stand this guy. How on earth does Kyle still have a job? Not only is he being hostile towards other people at the restaurant, but he's also being incredibly bigoted towards the original poster. Like, this is unacceptable in my opinion. To literally go out of your way to make a scene like this when someone's coming out of the bathroom just to go back to work is so inappropriate for a work setting, it's not even funny. Like, if they genuinely had a problem with that, they could go to their manager and discuss it there. But to purposefully make a scene just to try and embarrass this person is probably the definition of workplace harassment. So if anything, I mean, shame on these managers for not firing this guy sooner. It just baffles me that they would only send him home after so many situations that prove that he's just a danger to his coworkers. So what you could do is probably go above your managers and call up corporate. I mean, this guy is not a good human being, and he really should not be in the same workplace if this is how aggressive he's gonna be towards his coworkers. It feels like a very unsafe work environment, and honestly, I hope things work out for you for the best. My husband can't seem to understand why I'm upset about having to sleep in the car while we're staying with a friend, and I honestly don't know what to do. We ended up leaving a very toxic living situation. We were roommates with another couple, but ended up having to leave in a hurry. We are currently staying with another friend, but the problem at hand is that my husband is the only one allowed in the apartment. Apparently, the place is too small for the both of us to be in there at the same time. So basically, I've been in the car almost 24 hours a day for the last few days. I'm also disabled and I can't really walk very well. I told him tonight that I wanted to go to the hospital to check myself into getting back on some meds because I'm supposed to be taking them for anxiety. He's working a lot and he works a regular job and he also does DoorDash. He can't understand why I think it's bizarre that I'm not allowed in the apartment despite his friends knowing that we are married. It just doesn't sit right with me, and I told him I'm tired of sitting in the car almost 24 hours a day. I haven't had a shower since Friday and it's Monday night. I'm being forced to use the bathroom in a container because I cannot drive the car due to my disability. That's how weird and awkward things have finally gotten. It's honestly making me want to take a break from our relationship. I understand that he's worried about me going into the hospital. However, I'm trying to make him understand that this is something I need to do. I'm tired of basically having zero human contact, except for basically only him. I'm not really sure what to do here, but I'm starting to grow resentful and anxious. I think I'm getting depressed as well. I just can't seem to to get him to understand how I'm feeling, and I honestly don't know what to do. This is unbelievably sketchy. The fact that your husband is acting like this and not choosing to be at your side and maybe, I don't know, getting a hotel or something is really, really bizarre. I mean, he knows that you have a disability and you can't walk correctly, right? I mean, it's not like this has slipped through the cracks or anything like that. I mean, how could he honestly still stay at this apartment if you are not allowed inside of it? And I guarantee you it's not that small. There's no reason you couldn't stay in that apartment and actually have a roof over your head instead of being forced to live in the car, basically. And to top it all off, you are being forced to go to the bathroom in bottles in the car, all because his friends aren't going to let you inside to use the bathroom. I mean, this is actually really, really scary because this screams that something nefarious is clearly going on that his friends don't want you to know about. And worst of all, there's a good chance that he probably knows exactly what's going on. He is the one that's allowed to go inside the apartment after all. The original poster went on to say that apparently the friends don't want her in there because they don't know her that well, which is honestly just really weird and not a good enough excuse, in my opinion, to not allow someone to even go in there just to take a shower. I mean, these two are married. It's not like she's a complete stranger, so I'm really sorry that you're dealing with this, and hopefully you can find some other kind of living situation, because what you're going through is absolutely unacceptable, and there's no reason for you to be locked out of this apartment and be forced to basically live in this car while he's allowed to come and go as he pleases. An entitled Karen takes a man to court and forces him to make child support payments for her child, despite the fact that he is not this kid's father. But as a result, he took this back to court, and the former judge has been fired, and this lady lost her court case. So now she's being forced to pay back 3 years of child support payments, totaling to just over $23,000. Here's what happened. So my husband has a friend that has been ordered by the court to pay child support for a child that is not his, even though this child has a father that is involved and also pays child support. The mother has been double dipping because a judge decided to ignore the law and decided that this friend should be paying child support payments because the child was accustomed to a higher standard of living because of this friend's financial contributions to this household prior to the mother deciding to break things off and move out. Yes, it's as crazy as it sounds. The friend continued to help her financially because he still had feelings, and she was leading him on that they could maybe work things out. But when he finally came to his senses and realized that she was leading him on, he started dating his current girlfriend and stopped his financial aid. And when this happened, she absolutely lost her mind and ended up filing for child support payments. And the judge actually agreed that it was in the best interest of the child to grant her petition. This judge has since been removed from her post as a judge and is working as an advising lawyer in her family firm, which also now has a bad reputation due to her. After taking this all to court, the friend technically won, and the mother is ordered to repay him for 3 years of child support payments. He paid $150 a week for just a little over 3 years, but now she has to repay him at a whopping amount of $25 a week via wage garnishment because she made it abundantly clear in the court that she will not willingly pay him back. She will be paying this back for years due to interest and the yearly court fees. His attorney has advised him to wait 1 year and then they can file for an amendment to put liens on any property that she owns and possibly against any tax refunds she might get. But despite all this, he doesn't really feel like he won, considering how long it will take her to pay him back and the fact that he will probably be chasing her for years just to get his money. This story absolutely blows my mind because I honestly cannot believe that this judge legitimately went through with this and made this man make child support payments for a kid that is not even his. But even crazier, he's not the only one making child support payments. Like literally, there's already a father involved who's making payments and is involved in this kid's life. Like this judge is out of their mind for making this guy do this. It's just crazy because that's honestly so unbelievably corrupt. So it's great to hear that this lady got kicked out of being a judge because this is unbelievably unfair. So hopefully this guy's able to get his money back in full from this lady after paying child support for 3 years. And just in case you're wondering, I did the math, and if this guy's paying $150 a week For 3 years, that literally totals to $23,000. And that's a lot of money to pay to a kid that isn't even yours. I mean, how backwards can you possibly get? So in the end, hopefully it all works out, because under no circumstances did he ever deserve to be treated like this. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, use the playlist at the top of the description. And the next time you live stream, use the cream of the crop music. Search Cream of the Stream on Spotify or whatever platform you use for copyright-free music to use for your next stream.